All right, hey guys, Pastor Fred here. I did get your responses on Instagram, and so what I got was 50-50 on the poll. So I'm going to do If I Am My Own God today, and then next Monday I'm going to do What I Learned at Quarantine Is. So tune in on Monday to hear that video as well. All right, so let's get into it. If I am my own God, what does that mean? Well, there are actually three things that you can determine if you are God, or if I am God. And those three things are morality. I get to determine what's right and what's wrong. I can also determine truth. I can determine what is true and what is false. And I also have the ability to determine value. All right, so let's dig into those three things. So if I am my own God, then I get to say what is right and what is wrong. Because there always has to be a system of morality. There has to be a standard, right? I mean, if somebody tells you, hey, don't do that, that's wrong, what's the first question you ask about it? Well, why? Why is it wrong? What makes it wrong? The same for, you should probably do this. Why? What makes it right? There has to be a standard, which is why in our American culture, we've actually, most of the laws and things that we have are based on this. And a lot of people, they don't like that because they're like, well, that's an antiquated textbook. We don't need to use that anymore. But what we're doing when we declare the Bible as the authority is we are saying that God is the standard. Okay, so God is the one who sets the standard, and he determines what's right and what's wrong and why. But if you are God, and if I am God, then I get to say, hey, I think this is right, or I think what you're doing is wrong. And so you need to listen to me because obviously, I'm God. So also, I get to determine what is true and what is false. Not only do I get to determine the standard of morality, I get to determine the standard of truth. And for all of you guys out there who are caught up in the mindset of, well, if it's true for you, then it's true for you. And if it's true for me, then it's true for me. What if my truth declares your truth as a lie? You have to deal with it. You can't just sweep it under the rug. You can't just say, well, that's a bigoted way of thinking, so I'm not even going to, it's not even feasible. It's not. It has to be thrown out. It's worthless. You can't do that. You have to deal with it. If one standard of truth declares another standard of truth as false, you have to deal with it. You have to find what is the proper standard of truth and what makes it true and what makes this false. And lastly, and this is the one that's going to cause some contention and some controversy. If I am my own God, then I get to determine value. I get to determine what has value and why. I also get to determine who has value and why. So how does that play out in real life? Well, the way that plays out in real life is if I am my own God and I get to determine who has value, then I can say that the life of a mother is more important than the life of her baby. And so this person's life is more valuable than this person's life. And because I'm God, I can declare that. If I am God, you're probably thinking, well, Christians don't do that, Pastor Fred. Christians actually do that quite a bit, and I have done it. Given value to one person and taken value from another. When you see or when you hear about somebody who has allegedly or supposedly done a crime, committed a crime, you automatically form a judgment against them, and you determine the value of their life. And in the back of your mind, you think, well, that person deserves death. They deserve to die for what they've done. You have just then stripped that person of their value. They no longer have value of life. And we all have done that at some point. Because deep down, sometimes we think we can do a better job than God can. I mean, we find that in our ultimate enemy, Lucifer, as he has been called in Scripture, but Satan. You know, in the account in Isaiah chapter 14 that talks about Lucifer's fall from heaven, it says, he says, I will ascend up above the clouds. I will be like the Most High. See, Lucifer desired to be God because he thought he could do a better job than God. And then he uses that very thing to tempt Adam and Eve, the very first created beings in the garden. He uses that same temptation. He says, if you eat that fruit that God commanded you not to, you will not surely die. For God knows that in the moment you eat it, you will be like God. The very thing that Satan struggled with and that caused him to fall from grace is the very thing that he used to tempt the first human beings, which we have now seen that corruption and destruction that has fallen upon our world because humans thought, I can do a better job than God can. Okay, so if I am God, I can determine what's right and what's wrong. So I can determine morality, I can determine truth, and I can determine value. But if I am not God, then I need to seek out what is the standard of morality, of value, of truth. There has to be a standard. So which God do you follow? Thanks, guys.